such is that members of the National Assembly will this afternoon hold two special sittings to consider the proposal to ratify the Economic Partnerships Agreement between Kenya and the European Union. Now, this comes after Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda on September 1st signed the agreement with the EU ahead of the October deadline. However, Tanzania, Burundi, and South Sudan are yet to sign, which still poses a challenge of EAC actually enjoying the free market access in the EU. Well, being a single customs territory, however, the remaining EAC members must also sign the pact to make it enforceable. EAC heads of state who met in Dar es Salaam last week sought 3 more months for further deliberations.
We are talking about a matter of life and death. It's not something to be handled carelessly and without enough knowledge. You heard what the President told you about EPA, this EPA, Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union. On account of the importance of that EPA, I had to read the whole agreement myself. The ministers had prepared a brief, but I said no. This is not a matter that requires summary. I read all the 146 articles of that treaty. You heard what the President told you, that we are giving ourselves more time to all of us synchronize our understanding so that we all have the same understanding.
Because of the realization that even as we move to sign these agreements, we must balance all the issues. And our commitment as East Africans and our commitments as members of this continent that going forward, our development paradigm must be informed by the requirements and the needs of the people of this continent, and that we prioritize matters to do with export of our goods must be goods that are of the nature that will give us the best value. Therefore, work on matters to do with value addition, agro-processing, manufacturing, industrializations must underpin our engagements going forward with all our friends.
All right, so that is the developing story that we still keep an eye on. Remember that special sitting is going to be taking place this afternoon. All right, let's now have a conversation with Dr. Kiptoo, who is the PS, the State Department for Trade. Let's talk to him about this Kenya-EU partnership. Thank you so much for joining us at the News Center.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. So have you been in consultations with the countries that have not yet signed the agreement?
Which countries? The East African countries?
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yes, we just came from a summit in Dar es Salaam that discussed this specific issue of economic partnership agreement.
Right.
And as you had President Museveni, it was agreed that give an additional 3 months for all of us to look at this matter again and just make sure that we have the same understanding of the document before we sign in January next year.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's actually going, the signing is going to take place in January.
Yeah, some countries have already signed.
Okay.
The case of Kenya, we signed together with Rwanda. The requirement is that for EPA to be fully effective or functional, all the 5 countries have to sign and ratify.
Right.
So what we have done is just on our part, but we also expect that other countries like Uganda, Tanzania, and Burundi will also have to sign and ratify.
All right.
Yeah.
But this date, because this is not the first time that the date is being reviewed, why do we keep pushing forward? I mean, what sort of consultations are these that President Museveni is talking about that you really need to look at that document? What really is there anything that we don't know about that is so serious that we need more time all the time?
The spirit of East Africa is solidarity. We want to work together, carry one another, and I think if there is one party that feels they want to understand, they want to be given some time, I think it's only good that we do that. But for us in Kenya, we have gone through this. We are satisfied that the document is good for us. We started negotiations 14 years ago.
Okay.
And
14
years ago.
Wow.
It has taken a long time, and we have looked at all things and are convinced that the economic partnership agreement is good for Kenya and for East Africa.
All right.
Yeah.
As someone who's representing Kenya in this whole, block, do you feel like we're being dragged behind by these other countries which seem to have a problem with the, with really reading through this document? Is it dragging us behind?
Again, our treaty is very clear. The treaty provides for solidarity, working together, but it also allows for variable speeds. Sometimes you can move ahead of the other, those who are ready.
Yes.
I think in this particular case of economic partnership agreement, the EAC summit in 2002 agreed that we negotiate economic partnership agreement as a bloc. That's as EAC region. There are other 6 regions within the Africa, Caribbean and Pacific regions that have negotiated arrangements with EU. Maybe I should at this stage, Betty, tell you that we have traded with EU for over 30 years.
Yes.
The European community was started in 1950s. And at that time, we used to trade with, from that time up to 2000, we used to trade with EU under what is called a duty-free, quota-free, without reciprocity. The EU countries could not access our market duty-free. So we went through what is called Yaounde 1, Yaounde 2. Then we came to what is called Lome 1, 5 years, Lome 2, Lome 3, Lome 4, which ended in 2000. In 2000, we now adopted a new agreement called Cotonou Initiative. At that time, Betty, WTO had been set up. The World Trade Organization had been set up. And as you know, WTO is an institution that sets rules and ensures that there is fairness in trading, and also if there are any disputes, they resolve. So there were a number of countries that complained that EU was treating other developing countries, or least developing countries, in different ways. So we agreed then, therefore, that we must be WTO compliant. So economic partnership agreement are agreements that are WTO compliant. And this is why in that Cotonou agreement, it was agreed that we negotiate. We negotiated 2007, December. We were supposed to have concluded. We had not concluded. So we signed what is called Framework Economic Agreement. Now, at that time, when we signed, there were the ACP countries were in 2 categories. There are those categorized as developing countries. If you have a per capita income of 1,070 and above, you are categorized as upper income.
Okay.
I mean, developing countries. The rest are least developing.
Okay.
So in East Africa, 4 countries are considered least developed countries,
Okay.
according to the category. Their per capita income is below 1,070. It's only Kenya that has a per capita income of over 1,200.
Okay.
For that reason, EU came up with a regulation to govern those countries that were considered developing and accessing the EU market within the ACP countries. It's called Market Access Regulation 1528 of 2007.
Wow.
It has 27 countries, Kenya included. So this gave us, they said now negotiate. And we were given up to 1st of October 2014.
Yes.
To conclude. By 2014, we had not agreed. So we worked hard. By October 16, 2014, all of us initialized the document.
Okay.
All of us, including Tanzania
Yes.
and Burundi.
Rwanda.
So we signed, all of us, and we said, okay, now proceed and scrap the document, meaning put it in legal terms, and then translate to all the EU languages plus Kiswahili.
Okay.
But the only challenge a bit is that in 2014, we had been removed from accessing the EU market on duty-free, quota-free, because we failed to meet the deadline of 1st. So even though we agreed to initialize on October 16, we had been removed.
Okay.
And it took time for us to be brought back. We only were brought back on 25th of December 2014. Right. We had lost 2.5 months.
Wow.
And it was huge loss for our exporters.
All right. Let's talk about January. You know, I mean, it's a long time. It's you know, we still have some time to go. But what would be the economic implications, you know, once, you know, this agreement actually gets life?
Now, we were, okay, I just said we initialized in 2014.
Yes.
And we negotiated. We were told, okay, we give you an additional 2 years to work on it. By October this year,
yes.
first, you must have ratified this document. And we worked hard. We thought after translation and legal scrapping, we would finish. Now, this year, it became very elusive. We could not sign the document the way we had agreed.
Yes.
And it has been a moving target. Every time we want to sign, it is a few countries are not ready. And we just found ourselves getting close to 1st of October. And there is already a delegated act before EU Parliament that seeks to remove Kenya by 1st of October from accessing the EU market on duty-free, quota-free.
Yes.
The rest of the countries will not be removed because they will trade with EU under what is called everything but arms.
Okay.
For us, we have to be put into a new scheme called General System of Preferences, GSP, which will attract duties of between 15 to 22%. That will be disastrous.
So that means we're still at a disadvantage.
Yes, and that is why we decided to go to EU and plead with them to say, look, we know we are all not moving together. We still want to understand our brothers who are, not ready yet to sign. Yes. And we negotiated and said, please, we pleaded with the EU market and we said, okay, we will sign to show that we are committed, and we signed together with Rwanda. And now, today, we are going to, our parliament is ratifying to complete the process of signing and ratification. And then we notify EU now that we have finished our process. We will wait for our brothers within the East Africa to finish. Then now EPA can be implemented.
That is now, like you mentioned, in January.
Yes, that is in January. When we meet now, we are hoping that those who have not signed will now sign.
Okay.
And I think it's not that we are moving ahead of the rest, just doing it because our position is very unique.
Was different.
Yeah, and we stand to suffer alone. If by 1st of October, EU will actually implement the law already that is in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we wanted to postpone to see, at least don't punish us.
Okay.
And that is why EU summit in Dar es Salaam issued a communique to say, please, EU, don't punish Kenya.
All right.
But the only way for Kenya not to be punished is by ensuring that this law is not implemented. I mean, so 1st of October should not actually be
Yeah, should not be the
That's why we
deadline.
wanted our parliament
Okay.
to do something that then gives EU an indication that Kenya is very serious.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the EU. Is it still as important and as attractive, you know, especially after Brexit?
Yes. I must say the latest figures I have seen for our trade, we exported about 600 billion worth of exports last year. Of that amount, 45% went to Africa.
Okay.
East Africa plus COMESA and other, let's say just Africa. The next destination, which is very important for us, is EU, which takes about 22% of our exports. So 22% is huge. And all our flowers are going to EU. Last year, we exported worth 128 billion worth of exports to EU.
Okay.
This is a sector that is very important for us. It has investments worth over 2 billion. It has many companies, over 200 companies already engaged in this. And there are many many SMEs, people, over 4 million people who depend for their livelihoods on the sector.
All right.
This is why we have to do something, because once bitten, twice shy.
Exactly.
So we suffered a lot in 2014. We don't want to suffer again this time.
All right. So with the exit of Britain, it doesn't really affect.
Yeah, I don't think exit of Britain will cost much, because we think that the British might still retain the same arrangement with EU. Even if it does that, we will still have an arrangement with EU, but we don't think, I mean, with Britain, but it will take another 3 years. You know, the process of ex-Brexit will take 3 years. It's not immediate. So over that time, we'll assess our situation. But we don't think at this stage that is a problem.
All right.
And anyway, the EU treaty allows for any country to come in and to go out.
All right.
Just like our own treaty for East Africa. You get in, you got out.
Okay.
Just now we have Sudan on board. We have now 6 members of EAC. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris Kiptoo. He's the PS, the State Department for Trade. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Let's now